A child's eyes never lie. That was the thought that crossed Sarah Miller's mind when she met little Noah Thompson for the first time. The 8-year-old boy sat on his customized hospital bed, his thin fingers playing with the oxygen tube while his blue eyes, identical to his late mother's, studied her with a mix of hope and distrust. Sarah knew she was the 12th nanny candidate in less than 6 months, and the only one Noah hadn't managed to drive away with his silence. The air inside the Thompson mansion was heavy, not just because of the controlled humidity for Noah's sensitive lungs but also due to the weight of memories that seemed to whisper through the walls. Dozens of cameras tracked every movement, their cold lenses reflecting James Thompson's obsession with control since the mysterious death of his wife. Sarah could feel the constant gaze of those electronic sentinels as she walked down the hallway toward the main office. James Thompson was not the man she had expected to meet. At 45, his prematurely graying hair and lined face told a different story than the corporate portraits decorating the walls. His hands trembled slightly as he manipulated the screens displaying every angle of the mansion, every breath his son took. "Miss Miller?" His voice was low, controlled, but Sarah noticed the slight tremor of exhaustion. "Do you know why you're here?" "To take care of Noah," she answered simply, holding his gaze. "No." James stood up, his imposing figure casting a shadow over the mahogany desk. "You're here because my son smiled today. For the first time in months he smiled during your initial interview. And that..." He paused, swallowing hard. "That terrifies me more than anything." Before Sarah could process the weight of those words, a sound pierced the air, the sharp alarm of Noah's heart monitor. In seconds the world turned to chaos. James rushed toward the stairs, but Sarah was already 3 steps ahead, her years of experience guiding her every move. In the bedroom, Noah struggled for air, his lips taking on a bluish tint that Sarah knew all too well. With precise movements, she administered the emergency medication, her calm voice cutting through the panic of the moment. "Breathe with me, Noah. Slowly. Like the ocean you love so much." The boy's wide eyes met hers, clinging to her presence like an anchor in the storm. Slowly, his breathing steadied, and the terrifying alarm gave way to a steady, rhythmic beep. It was only then that Sarah noticed James Thompson standing at the door, silent tears streaming down his face. But they weren't just tears of fear, there was something else in his gaze. Something that looked very much like guilt. At that moment, Sarah Miller understood that there was much more at stake in that house than just the well-being of a sick child. The cameras watching them held deeper secrets than mere parental concern, and she had just committed herself to a story that would change her life forever. 3 weeks passed and Sarah discovered that the Thompson mansion held more than just cameras. It held unfulfilled dreams. In every silent hallway, traces of Clara's presence remained untouched. A vase of dried flowers on the closed piano, a collection of books about the sea in the library, photographs carefully arranged on the walls. Noah was slowly beginning to open up. During his respiratory therapy sessions, he shared small fragments of memories about his mother. "Mom always said the sea had healing powers," he whispered one morning, his fingers stroking a pearlescent seashell kept on his nightstand. "She promised to take me to the beach for my birthday. She said the salty water would make my lungs stronger." Sarah noticed how the boy's eyes sparkled when he spoke about the ocean, a place he knew only through Clara's stories. His small hands sketched endless waves in his notebooks as if trying to summon the ocean within those monitored walls. One night, after putting Noah to bed, Sarah found James in his office. The monitoring screens cast restless shadows over his tired face. On the desk, a cup of cold coffee rested beside a partially open folder, official hospital documents. "Mr. Thompson," Sarah began softly, "Noah showed me the seashell today." James froze. His hand instinctively moved to cover the papers on the desk, but not before Sarah saw the words toxicology report printed at the top. "Clara had so many dreams for him," James murmured, his voice laden with old pain. "She said I was suffocating our son with too much control. Our last argument," he paused, swallowing hard. "She wanted to take him to the beach against all medical recommendations. She said I was turning our home into a prison." Sarah watched as his hands trembled while adjusting the volume of Noah's monitor. "Children need more than just protection," she said gently. "They need hope, dreams. Noah speaks of the ocean as if it were a promised treasure. The last gift she gave him was that seashell," James revealed, his voice breaking. "The morning after our fight, she..." His words trailed off, but the weight of the unspoken hung in the air like a shadow. "Sometimes the greatest act of love is learning to let go," Sarah offered softly. James finally met her gaze, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Clara said the exact same thing that last night?" He took a deep breath as if each word required immense effort. And the next morning the silence that followed carried the weight of 1,000 unsaid words. Sarah realized that there was more to Clara's death than a simple tragedy. There was a mystery buried beneath layers of guilt and surveillance systems. As she left the office, she felt the cameras tracking her every step, like silent guardians of secrets yet to be uncovered. Autumn brought a subtle change to the Thompson mansion. Noah's cheeks began to regain color, his respiratory attacks lessened, and his smile, so rare before, appeared more often. Sarah transformed his room into an ocean sanctuary, with seashell mobiles hanging from the ceiling and walls painted in shades of blue that mirrored the waves of the sea. One afternoon, while organizing Noah's medication, Sarah found a journal hidden in the nightstand drawer. The pages, written in Clara's delicate handwriting, contained notes about alternative treatments for Noah's condition. The last entry, dated the day of her death, caught Sarah's attention. "James doesn't understand. His fear is suffocating our son. I found a specialized clinic on the coast that can help Noah. Tomorrow, while James is at the board meeting, I will take Noah for a consultation. I have to try, for my son's sake." Sarah's heart pounded. Those words shed new light on Clara's death. Her eyes darted to the camera in the corner of the room. The room, always vigilant, always recording. A doubt grew in Sarah's mind. Did James know about Clara's plans that day? "Sarah?" Noah's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway, his face pale but determined. "I found something I need to show you." Noah led her to his closet, where, behind a pile of blankets, there was an old box. Inside, Sarah found carefully stored newspaper clippings. One headline stood out: "Local businessman questions circumstances of wife's death." The article mentioned an initial investigation into unusual levels of medication in Clara's system. "I found this 2 weeks ago," Noah whispered, his voice trembling. "Mom always said Dad was too controlling with her medicine too." Before Sarah could process that revelation, the sound of shattering glass echoed down the hallway. James stood at the doorway, a tray of tea broken at his feet, his face a mask of horror as he saw the exposed clippings. "Noah, go to your room," James ordered, his voice strained. "No?" Noah's response shocked everyone, even himself. "I'm tired of secrets, Dad." "Mom?" His voice faltered and he struggled to breathe. Sarah instinctively moved to help him, but Noah gently pushed her away. For the first time, he faced his father without needing oxygen support. "Mom wanted me to live, not just breathe." James staggered as if he had been struck. "You don't understand," he murmured, his defenses crumbling. "Your mother, she didn't understand that I only wanted to protect you both. That night, when I found out about her plans to take you to that experimental clinic." "What did you do, James?" Sarah's voice cut through the tense air. "What really happened that night?" The silence that followed was deafening. The cameras continued their silent work, mechanical witnesses to a moment that would forever change the delicate balance of this family. The weight of the confrontation hung over the Thompson mansion like lead. Sarah gently guided Noah back to his room, noticing how his small shoulders trembled with long-contained emotions. James remained in the hallway, shattered pieces of the tray at his feet, a perfect reflection of his crumbling world. Later that night, after Noah had finally fallen asleep, Sarah found James in his office. The surveillance screens were all turned off, for the first time since she had arrived at the mansion. In the darkness, James seemed smaller, more vulnerable. "Clara was right about everything," he began, his voice low and broken. "About the excessive control, about Noah needing more than just medication. That night, I found the plane tickets on her computer. She was planning to take Noah to an experimental clinic on the coast." Sarah sat silently, letting the space between them fill with long-buried truths. "We had a terrible argument," James continued, his hands shaking as he opened a drawer. From it, he pulled out an old bottle of medication. "Clara had high blood pressure. I always controlled her medicine just like Noah's. That night she was so agitated. I increased her dose, thinking it would help her calm down, make her give up that absurd idea of the clinic." The horror of realization hit Sarah like a cold wave. "James, what did you do?" "I just wanted to protect them," his voice broke. "When I found her the next morning, the doctor said it was an accidental overdose, but I knew my hands had caused it. My obsessive control had taken not just her freedom, but her life." Sarah felt her heart tighten. Here was a man destroyed not only by guilt but by the crushing weight of his well-intentioned actions. "The cameras," she said softly, "aren't just to protect Noah, are they?" James shook his head. "They're my penance. My way of ensuring I never hurt someone I love again through too much Control. But I'm doing the same thing to Noah, aren't I? Suffocating him just like I did to Clara. A soft sound at the door interrupted them. Noah stood there without his oxygen tank, silent tears streaming down his face. I heard everything, Dad, he said, his voice small but firm. Mom used to say that forgiveness is like the sea, it has the power to wash everything away. Sarah watched as father and son looked at each other across the space filled with years of secrets and pain. In that moment, something shifted in the Thompson mansion, as if the walls, silent witnesses to so much suffering for so long, could finally breathe. Morning brought a subtle change to the mansion. Sarah found James in the conservatory, where Clara used to grow her favorite flowers. The cameras, still present, now felt less intrusive, silent witnesses to a family trying to rebuild. The scent of white lilies filled the air, carrying with it memories that no longer hurt as much as before. Noah asked to see the sea today, James said softly, his fingers brushing the petals of a lily, Clara's favorite flower. For the first time in years, I didn't feel panic when I heard that request. Just... He paused, searching for the right words, just sadness for not having allowed it sooner. Sarah watched as the morning light cast soft shadows across his tired face. The weeks since his confession had been intense. Nights of painful conversations, days of adjusting to a new reality where secrets no longer suffocated the air. James was learning, slowly, that love and control were not the same thing. His test results have improved significantly, Sarah commented, sitting beside him on the wooden bench Clara had chosen years ago. Dr. Stevens said he's never seen Noah this strong. His oxygen levels are almost normal during the day. A hesitant smile appeared on James's face. Yesterday, I found him in Clara's room. He was sitting at her vanity looking at old beach photos. He had spread them all over the table, like a map of dreams never realized. His voice trembled slightly. He said he could smell the sea in her perfume. I hadn't realized until then how much of Clara still lives in him. Not just in the illness but in his strength, his adventurous spirit. Sarah felt warmth in her heart at those words. It was the first time James had spoken of Clara without guilt dominating his voice. Noah has so much of her in him, she agreed softly. The same determination, the same thirst for life. The moment was interrupted by hurried footsteps. Noah entered the conservatory carrying something in his hands, Clara's old journal. His eyes shone with a mix of anxiety and hope. Dad, I need to show you something, he said, his voice steady despite the visible emotion. Noah sat between them, opening the journal to a marked page. The paper was slightly creased as if it had been read over and over again. Mom wrote this a week before. He paused, taking a deep breath. She said, my greatest dream is to see Noah strong enough to feel the sea breeze on his face. James needs to understand that our son deserves more than just surviving, he deserves to live. I found a clinic that could be our salvation, our chance at a normal life. James took the journal with trembling hands. His tears fell onto the already time-worn pages. Clara always knew, didn't she? She always knew that true love means giving freedom. I was so focused on keeping them safe that I forgot to let them live. Sarah watched father and son in that moment of deep understanding. Then, Noah said something that would change the course of their lives. Dad, I want to go to the clinic Mom found. The one on the coast. His voice was firm, his eyes shining with determination. Sarah can come with us. She knows about medicine, she can help us. And he hesitated for a moment, his hands clutching the journal. We can take Mom's ashes. She always wanted to be near the sea. The silence that followed was unlike any other that had ever filled that house. It was a silence full of possibilities, of hope, of love beginning to heal old wounds. In the conservatory, among the flowers Clara had loved so much, a new story was beginning to be written. A story of courage, forgiveness, and new beginnings. The decision to visit the coastal clinic set in motion a profound transformation within the Thompson mansion. Sarah watched as James, for the first time in years, James began dismantling the elaborate camera system. An act of symbolic liberation that no one had expected. Noah, sitting on his bed, held the silver urn containing his mother's ashes, his eyes shining with a mix of anxiety and hope. She's finally going to see the sea, Noah whispered, his words carrying a weight that made Sarah's heart tighten. The trip to the coast would be Noah's first in years. Dr. Stevens had approved the journey, but with reservations. His lungs are still fragile, he warned during their last appointment. Any sudden change in climate could trigger a severe crisis. On the eve of their departure, Sarah found James in his office, now unrecognizable without the surveillance screens. He was holding an old photo, Clara smiling on the beach, her dark hair dancing in the wind. I found the clinic she discovered, he said softly. They have an experimental treatment using seawater and respiratory therapy. Clara was right all along. The moment was interrupted by a sound that sent a chill through both of them, the alarm on Noah's heart monitor. They ran to his room, finding him hunched over Clara's urn, struggling to breathe. The familiar fear took hold of James, his hands trembling as he reached for the phone to call an ambulance. No, Noah managed to say between labored breaths. I don't want a hospital. I want to go to the sea. Sarah acted quickly but differently this time. Instead of rushing for medication, she opened the bedroom windows, letting the night breeze flow in. Breathe with me, Noah, she instructed gently. Imagine the sound of the waves just like your mother described. To everyone's surprise, especially James, Noah began to calm down. His breaths, initially short and painful, gradually found a smoother rhythm. Mom, he whispered, she's helping me. James watched, frozen between the familiar fear and something new, trust. Sarah saw the exact moment he made his decision. Moving closer to his son, he knelt beside the bed. Noah, his voice was steady despite the tears, tomorrow we're going to see the sea. Not because of the clinic, not because of the treatments, but because your mother was right. You deserve more than just surviving. You deserve to live. Sarah felt the weight of those words. It was more than a promise, it was a release. Years of guilt, fear, and excessive control dissolving into something new, something that felt a lot like hope. Noah hugged his father, still holding Clara's urn between them, as if it were a silent blessing. Can we turn off the last cameras now? He asked softly. James looked at Sarah, who nodded gently. With determined steps, he walked over to the main control panel, and for the first time in years, the Thompson mansion was completely free of surveillance. The silence that followed was no longer suffocating, it was liberating. That night, while Noah slept peacefully, Sarah found James in the garden. He was holding the old seashell Clara had given their son. You know, he said quietly, I think I finally understand. It's not the cameras that keep our loved ones safe. It's the courage to let them fly. The sunrise at the beach brought a soft breeze laced with salt. Noah, holding his mother's urn tightly, took his first steps onto the warm sand. His eyes shone with a mix of tears and joy as he watched the waves dance beneath the pink sky. James walked beside him. No monitors, no cameras, just a father learning to trust and love. Sarah stood at a short distance, her heart overflowing as she watched the scene unfold. The transformation that had begun in that mansion filled with cameras had blossomed into something deeper than any of them could have imagined. She always said the sea has the power to heal, Noah murmured, his fingers tracing the smooth surface of the urn. His breathing, once so labored, now flowed in sync with the rhythm of the waves. I can feel it, Dad. I can feel what she wanted us to feel. James knelt in the sand beside his son, finally letting his tears fall freely. Your mother was right about so many things, he said softly. About you, about life, about love. She knew that. We needed more than walls and cameras, we needed the freedom to grow. The seaside clinic was unlike anything they had ever known. Its wide windows welcomed the ocean breeze, and the sound of the waves was part of the treatment. The doctors explained how seawater, rich in minerals, could strengthen Noah's lungs through specialized therapies. It's as if Clara planned everything, Sarah remarked during one of Noah's respiratory therapy sessions. She didn't just find a treatment, she found a way for you to reconnect. Days turned into weeks and the changes in Noah were visible. His cheeks gained color, his laughter, once held back by the fear of triggering a crisis, now rang free and true. James was changing too, learning to loosen his grip on control, discovering that love flourishes best in freedom. One particularly meaningful afternoon, the three of them walked to a secluded part of the beach. Noah carried Clara's urn and the old seashell she had given him. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, creating an almost sacred moment. It's time, isn't it? Noah asked softly, looking at his father. James nodded, his hands trembling slightly as he helped his son open the urn. Together, they let Clara's ashes drift into the wind, dancing over the waves she had loved so much. The seashell, her final gift to Noah, was gently placed in the water, carrying with it years of fears and regrets. Look, Sarah whispered, pointing toward the horizon. A group of dolphins leaped through the sunlit waters as if celebrating that moment of liberation. Noah took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the salty air. We don't need the cameras anymore, Dad, he said, his voice carrying a wisdom beyond his years. Mom is watching us through the sea, the wind, the sun. She always has been. James pulled his son into an embrace and Sarah joined them. There, beneath the endless sky, they were no longer employer and caretaker but a family, united by love and the courage to change. The Thompson mansion awaited them, no longer a prison of surveillance, but a home where love could finally breathe freely. Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. If you were moved by the Thompson family's journey and want to hear more powerful stories like this, give us a like and subscribe to the Life Stories channel. Your support helps us continue bringing narratives that inspire and transform lives. See you in the next story.